Hey, Luke, Hard Times Guy here. Today I want to talk to you about auctions. Really, I want to talk to you about auctions in general to a degree, but my purpose for making this video is one specific auction. And it's going to be held next Sunday. Today is Monday, August the 12th. Next Sunday is August the 18th. There's going to be an auction in Bedford, Indiana on August the 18th. If you have an interest in auctions and antique auctions, and you live within 200 miles of Bedford, Indiana, you need to watch this video. And you need to think seriously about what I'm telling you in this video, because there's tremendous opportunity for someone who is interested in any of these things that I talk about in this auction. More about that later. Let's go on. I think first of all I need to give you a little history and talk to you about some people. I just can't emphasize the significance of what this auction is going to be without you knowing some of this background about these people. So first of all, I'm going to say John and Jane Chismar are friends of mine, and they're the people having the auction. Now, I haven't known them for a long time, but I've known them long enough to think a whole lot of them. I think they're people of good character, and they're just good folks, and I like them a lot. And what I want to happen is I want them to have this auction and it be a home run for them. I want there to be a crowd of people, and everybody there's at least two bidders on everything they got that think this is something that they got to have, so that everything in their sale brings maximum amount of money, and John and Jane do well in the auction and continue on with their lives. But the reason I'm making this video and talking to you is I don't think there's a snowball's chance of that happening quite that well for them. And we'll talk about that as we continue talking about this auction. But I want to still talk about John and Jane for a little bit. John and Jane are about my age. John's a few months younger than me. Jane looks like she's about 10 or 15 years younger than me and John, but I don't really know how old she is, so I'm not even going to go there. It's the way you get in trouble talking about how old you think women are. But fine people. They used to live in Anderson, Indiana, and I have here something. This actually is, some of you people that are old like me, you know what this is. This is the Antique Week Mid-Central edition of their antique shop guide. And back in the days, the middle 1970s, when I first started being interested in antiques, interested in buying them and selling them, Antique Week, published in Knightstown, Indiana. It was a weekly publication. It was like a thick newspaper, and it had everything you needed to know in it about buying and selling antiques, including all the best auctions for antiques that were upcoming in that week. And in addition to publishing that newspaper, they put out books like this that you could buy. This particular one is a listing of antique shops: Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Tennessee, West Virginia. This covers a lot of the states around Indiana, and this particular one was belonged to Patsy Faust, and she owned the Union Mule Antiques on Lincoln Avenue here in Bedford, Indiana. And I ended up with this because I bought some things at one of her estate sales after her and her husband Don were passed on. Antique shop guide. Here's one 1988, and here's one 1986. I've got one laying here from 81 and 82 and 80 and 81. I had some others. I think I give one of them to John. The only reason I'm showing you this is to show you an ad that's in these books. And right there it is. You see that? Chismar's Attic is the name of the business. John and Jane owned, Anderson, Indiana. They owned that business for several years. Back in the beginning in the middle 80s, early 80s, and on for, I can't even tell you how long, but a long time, until they moved from Anderson, Indiana, and went somewhere else. Antique dealers for a long time. That's important to know because of what I'm going to tell you here in a little bit. What their connection to Bedford, Indiana is Ken Nevin. And you say, who in the heck's Ken Nevin? Well, let's go beyond Ken and talk about his daughter, Misty Pate, and her husband, Mark Pate. Because you might know them. If you're in Bedford, Indiana and interested in antiques, you might know Mark and Misty because they opened a shop here a few years ago called Wildflower Antiques. And it operated for several years. They're on the east side of the Bedford Square. And then they discontinued that shop, but it's still there, and it's still the basis for Misty's business. And if you know anything about her, she's a rock star on YouTube video sales and antique sales on there because she liquidated the inventory from their antique business through YouTube videos and sales, and she just continued right on, and she still does that. Buys and sells things and makes videos, and I call her a rock star. That's what I think she is, some kind of a rock star. Misty Pate, Drifter, Junker, Vintage Hunter. It's the name of her site. Go look at it. Her dad is Ken Nevin, and Ken Nevin and John Chismar were good friends in Anderson, Indiana. They worked together, they antiqued together, they did lots of things together, had lots of common interest, were good friends. I've never heard either one of them say this. They're mostly poking fun at one another, but I think best friends, John Chismar and Ken Nevin. You may have seen them even in some of my videos because I had some fictional characters in some of my earlier videos, and two of those characters were the Henry twins, Jay Bird and Ray Bob Henry. And as I said, they were fictional characters, but once in a while I depicted them as if I were showing pictures of them. And these two jokers, Ken and John, they posed for some pictures for me a couple of times as Jay Bird and Ray Bob, the Henry twins. Enough of that. I need to stay on point because I don't want to lose you. Listen to me. If you don't want to watch the video, you're bored with what I'm saying, fast forward through it until you find out more about this auction that's going on. Next Sunday, 1 o'clock. Downtown Bedford, just going west on US 50, which is also in Bedford, Indiana, a one-way street called 15th Street. Going west there, when you cross J Street, the street that used to have the railroad tracks in it, when you cross it, it's the second building on the right. They're having this auction. And write that down right now. Auction, Bedford, Indiana, Sunday, August 18th. So that if you get bored with me and turn this video off, you at least know that. I want you to go to that auction. You should go to that auction if you have any kind of interest at all in buying antiques, buying good stuff at bargain prices, because I think that's what's going to happen Sunday afternoon. John and Jane Chismar had this business, and they let me regress and say they left Anderson, Indiana at some point in time after John retired from his regular job. They left Anderson, Indiana and went to Florida. And they were back and forth between Indiana and Florida, as a lot of people that do that are, because they had family back in Indiana. But they essentially changed their residence to Florida, and they moved all their stuff to Florida. And when they closed their antique business, they packed it away carefully in big plastic totes and big cardboard boxes, and they either stored it somewhere or took it to Florida with them. Can you imagine that? The entire contents of an antique shop that was what was left of adult lifetime of collecting, packed away in totes several years ago. Very much of that stuff, even though it went to Florida, some of it, and came back to Bedford, Indiana, or it moved around from place to place, hadn't been out of those totes in all that time. Good stuff, a lot of it spent years of collecting, packed away in totes, not seen for years. Today is Monday, August the 12th, and here's one of the problems with this auction. A lot of that merchandise that was packed away years ago in totes out of an antique shop is still in totes. John Chismar and Ken's been helping him. They've been taking stuff out, unwrapping it, putting it on tables to display for this auction. They've been doing that for weeks. Now, I grant you that neither one of them are really, really hard workers. They do a lot of peddling and talking and stuff like that. I go by there and aggravate them myself sometimes. But they've been doing that for weeks, and there's still things in totes. They have no idea what's in there. And the pictures that you're going to see online at Kinzer's auction, the ones they were taken sometime last week, and he didn't take pictures of everything that was out there, and he dang sure didn't take pictures of everything that's going to be in the auction, because a lot of it was still in totes, and a lot of it still is. Now think about that. I've been by there checking. I mean, there's some really good stuff hidden away that no one knows about that's going to get overlooked. It's the kind of a thing, if I were 15, 20 years younger and still as active in buying and selling antiques as I was then, I would not want you to know about. Because I would want to be the only one that knew about all this stuff, and it was going to be in this sale, and this sale was going to be on Sunday afternoon, and it was going to be in a place where it was difficult to sell stuff, and people were going to get aggravated and leave. I'd want to be one of those 10 or 15 people standing around just stealing everything because they had to sell it. It has to be gone. The building has to be cleaned out. They got to move out. They got to go. I would love to be one of those few people standing around there putting up with everything that was aggravating about that sale to buy that stuff. Because I'm telling you, those of you that go to auctions all the time, those of you that make money buying and selling antiques, or buying and selling anything at auction, you know that's the kind of auction you want to go to. The one which is a have-to auction, the one which is in a place that makes it difficult to even see the stuff, much less sell it. You want to be at that auction because there's going to be lots of stuff sold for way less than it should be sold for. It's going to be sold for well under the money of what it's worth. I don't know where I got to. Chismar's attic, Misty, and all that. Let's talk about this building for a minute. John and Jane, as I said, they moved to Florida. Their friend Ken Nevin, his daughter and son-in-law had opened an antique shop in Bedford, and things were going pretty well for them. They were having, they had a nice building. They did a nice job with it. They were having a good time. I was actually their first customer the day they opened. I made a video about that. I just love Mark and Misty, and I even like Ken as much as you can, you know. John and Jane had this idea that they could have a shop here too, and they were looking for a building, and they bought a building in Bedford, Indiana. And their plan for this building was in the downstairs floor, turned it into an antique shop, and in the upstairs floor, turn it into living quarters where when they were in Indiana, they could live there. And they intended to spend winters in Florida and peak antique season in Indiana and have this shop open. That was their plan. It was a good plan. And I'll give them this, on the upstairs living quarters part of it, they hit a home run. I mean, it is absolutely gorgeous up there. We're in the living quarters that they built. I love what they've done with that great big open upstairs of that two-story old building. I just love what they did there. And it would be a really, I'd like to live in a place like that. But they never got to the downstairs because they had hiccups. They had problems. They had problems with their elderly members of their families, their health, and their eventual demise. They had problems with their own health as they got older. They had problems with building contractors not delivering like they were supposed to. They had problems with the expenses being more than they had anticipated. All those kind of problems that you have in a big project like that. John and Jane had them. Lots of hiccups. And so they didn't get done what they wanted to do. And I already mentioned that John's just a few months younger than me. He's 77 years old. He's turned 77 after I did in March. And he's got some health problems of his own. And projects like this, we get to a place where we're not up for it anymore. And that's where they got to. They got to a place where time caught up with them. Time went past them. They didn't have time to get done what they wanted to do, and they don't have time left in their life to devote all the energy that they don't have in this project anymore. And so they developed an exit plan, a way to get out of this. And the first part of it was sell the building. Well, they accomplished that. They didn't accomplish it like they wanted to. Now, they haven't told me this, but they've told me, I know about the sale. I read the newspapers and I see the real estate transfers, and they didn't come out really well on this building that they bought. They did a A1 no expenses spared job on that upstairs, and they were planning on doing the same thing downstairs, and they got more in the building than they could get out of it. And so they took somewhat of a beating on the building, but they sold it. Now they got to get out of it, and they're running out of time with that too. And because of that, they've got this auction going on that this auction could have been multiple auctions in a big auction arena over a long period of time, but they don't have that kind of time. They have a life to continue on. They have to go back to see doctors in Florida and back and forth and things like that. So time they're being restricted by it. And what happens in a thing like that is you have to do something in a less ideal manner than what you want to do, and that's what this auction is. August the 18th, 1 p.m., downtown Bedford, Indiana, a sale. One thing that hadn't been mentioned, I'm going to mention now, is the local history that's in this sale. And you're not going to see that in the ad either. You're not going to know that some of these things that were things that John purchased after they came to Bedford, Indiana to put in his shop, and really good things. Dr. Richard Buchanan, some of you may know that name. He was a dentist in Bedford, Indiana. When I was a child, he was my dentist. He was in the third floor of the Citizens National Bank building, which is right across the street from where this auction site is. Dr. Buchanan had his dental office in there. And Dr. Buchanan was a local antique enthusiast. He liked antiques. He bought them and kept them, and so did his children. I have a primitive church pew. Back behind me in this building that I bought, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago. I bought it at an auction that they were having to settle Dr. Buchanan's estate that he owned that came out of the Methodist Church in Leesville, Indiana, first settlement in Lawrence County. I've still got the things back here behind me. It's for sale. But his children became antique enthusiasts much like he did, and he had a daughter. I think her name was Chris. I think he had more than one daughter, but I think the daughter that had this sale over on Denson Avenue a few years ago, maybe 2, 3 years ago. Time gets away from him, but she had a sale. She sold a bunch of things. It wasn't her, it was her family. She had passed. Dr. Buchanan's daughter, Chris, she had passed on. Her family had an estate sale over on Denson Avenue. Sold, had a fantastic auction over there. Sold lots of good stuff. And John was there, John Chismar. He bought a lot of good things at that sale. Guess what? He moved them to this building and they sat down and they've been sitting there ever since. No one's had an opportunity to buy them. Now they're going to be sold in his sale. The sad thing about it is I don't think they're going to bring what John paid for them at that earlier sale, because it was an all-day sale in a spread out area where everybody could see what was going on, and it was well advertised as local historical stuff that belonged to Dr. Buchanan and then his extended family. There's a couple of dental cabinets in this thing that John bought, and I mean, John paid a premium for them. He liked them, he wanted them, he bought them. They're for sale in this sale. That's the kind of thing, you look at those in the Kinser ad. That's the kind of thing you like. Well, here's your opportunity to own them under the money more than likely. And there's just all kinds of things that were out of that sale that's in this sale. It's Bedford history. There's a back bar, the top of a back bar in this sale. If you're my age or older and lived in Bedford, Indiana all your life, you remember places like Torpy's Tavern and Puffy's Pool Room and Caddis Pool Room there on 16th Street. There's a back bar in there that came out of those places. And it came out of there and it went from Caddis's Pool Room across the street into Jake Thurman. Jake Thurman bought Caddis Pool Room out, but I don't know, way back there in the 60s or 70s sometime, and he moved it all across the street. It stayed there. John Duggar, good friend of mine who passed on from COVID during the first wave of COVID, he bought that pool room from Thurman's, and he had a pool hall there, and that pool hall moved from there into the building now that Chismar owns, and that cabinet moved with it. That's Bedford history there. And there's other things like that came through that process. So, I don't know. Don't miss this sale. If you like antiques, there's good old stuff that you haven't seen. There's other stuff too. There's too much stuff. There's things that you don't want. Down under a table there, I was looking the other day, there must have been $200 or $300 dolls down there. You know me, I don't care, I don't care what kind of doll it is. I don't want it. But if you like dolls, I'm sure there's some good ones down there in that pile. And another thing I'm pretty sure of is, in that sale, in them narrow aisles where you can't get in there, if you go to this sale, I guarantee you this, you'll be aggravated. I mean, if you really want to go, if you really want these good things that are there, and you're dedicated and determined, you're going to get aggravated. A lot of them are going to get aggravated enough that they just leave, because they're trying to sell all this stuff inside that one. It's air conditioned. That's better than if it wasn't air conditioned. The building's air conditioned, but there's way too much stuff in there. You're not going to be able to see half of it. If you get there early, you're still not going to be able to see stuff. People are going to be in your way. The aisles are going to be full, and when they start selling stuff, you're not going to. That kind of stuff aggravates auctioneers. But you seasoned veterans know that aggravation also is part of the formula that makes you get a bargain. that makes you get what you want for a price that you're not going to get it where those aggravations weren't present. I don't know. I started out to do a job here to try to help John and Jane have a successful auction, but they got so many things stacked against them, and they run up against a wall, and they run up against time to the, I don't know where this auction can be a success or not, but I know they got a lot of good stuff. I know they got a lot of stuff that isn't so good, and I know they got a lot of stuff that's yard sale stuff. You're going to have to get in there and dig to find the good, and you're going to have to get in there and fight to own the good. But before this is over, lots of people are going to leave with truckloads, armloads, box loads of stuff, and they're going to be saying, can you believe this? I bought all this stuff right here for pennies, and this one thing, and they're going to hold up something, they're going to say, this thing's worth hundreds of dollars. It's that kind of a thing. So plan to be there. Plan to give it your best shot. August the 18th, Sunday afternoon, 1 o'clock, Bedford, Indiana. I recommend if you can get there at least a couple hours early so that you can go through there and kind of make yourself a plan and a map and a note card of reminders of where what you want is, and so that you can try to bid on it successfully. And it's going to be a heck of a sale. I'm going to be there. I hope that I get there and I can't buy anything, because I want the sale. My normal, I want to go there and absolutely get a steal on everything I buy. That's my normal mindset when I go to an auction. But this auction, I want to go there and I want to not be able to buy anything because the crowd went crazy and paid too much for everything. Because I want John and Jane to have a good auction. I want the sellers to hit home run Sunday. I'm telling you, the potential auction goer, they got too many strikes against them already. That's not going to happen. They're going to take a beating on a lot of their stuff. Help them out where you can, but come and treat yourself to an opportunity to buy a lot of things at a good price that you can make some money on. I'm Luke, the Hard Times Guy. You have a good day. We'll say this one more time. Cancer Auction Service. Look up Cancer Auction Service online. Pour over the listing that he has for this upcoming auction, Sunday, August the 18th, 1 o'clock, downtown Bedford. Pour over that thing and hear me when I tell you that just a fraction of it you're going to be able to see in his listing. There's way too much to sell in one day. They're trying to sell it in too little time, in too little space. It's going to aggravate people. There's going to be a boatload of bargains. Show up for this sale if you got any interest in that at all. And I'm telling you, if you have to come from 200 miles away, it'll be worth your while if you come and work diligently at buying the things you want.